A Pokemon disc, or a disc Pokemon. That is the only description we have for the middle legendary, the third legend of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. I chose Pokemon Forever because it's all about time travel, and I think Totoo is the legendary Pokemon of Scarlet and Violet, or rather, I guess it's DLCs. Hey Pokemon Masters, Toby here, and I suppose if you haven't rooted deep into the lore that's buried under Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, you might not have even seen this or know a lot about it. So if you don't want spoilers for potentially the DLC, maybe this video isn't for you, but it concerns the legendary that is at the heart of the Paradox phenomenon. The Paradox and Terrestrial phenomenons that appear in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, and this we learn about through the Scarlet or Violet book, that are described, according to the Pokedex, as either an expedition journal or a fanciful magazine. And in this book we get wonderful depictions, not just of places in the Paldea region or people or events that happened, but also of legendary Pokemon. Okay, clip from the third Pokemon movie. These are legendary Pokemon, Marley.
And in this book, the artist imagined what some of them might look like.
Ah, that was the third Pokemon movie. I should have got that disc instead. So here's the deal when it comes to all of this. There are some depictions that are awfully peculiar of legendary Pokemon in this book. The illusionary image of a Swords of Justice trio combined together, or perhaps the legendary beasts all as one. One is exclusive to Violet and one Scarlet. But on top of that, there is this middle legendary, the third legendary Pokemon, a disc Pokemon. And so I want to talk about what these legendaries are and what they could mean for the upcoming DLC. Before I jump into it though, I have to say a huge thank you to today's sponsor, Surfshark VPN. I know I'm not the only person who's been stuck out on a train when a new Pokemon trailer's dropped, or out traveling, and I don't quite have the data or connection I'd like, and public Wi-Fi could be the way to go, but is it safe? Surfshark, which is available using the link in the description, is the answer, helping you surf the web with the protection of a VPN, which routes your connection through another server anywhere else in the world. But let's be real, the main reason I've been using Surfshark for several years now is because of the ability to route my connection through another region of the world and watch region-locked content. Maybe you're in the Galar region like me, but you'd love to be able to watch content that's only available in the Paldea region. That's where Surfshark's got you covered. As always, I'm using this as the main way to keep up to date with Pokemon journeys. It's been highly convenient for me. And as always, if you sign up today using my link, it not only hugely helps out my channel, but you'll be getting 83% off and 3 months for free, which makes it the best value for money VPN I'm aware of. And on top of all of that, if you're not totally satisfied, there is a 30-day money-back guarantee, so there's no reason not to click the link and try it out. So what are you waiting for? Click that link at the top of the description, and thank you once again to Surfshark VPN for sponsoring this video. Let's talk about the disc Pokemon first. Let's talk about its entry, its Pokedex entry. It's not really a Pokedex entry, it's a Scarlet Violet book entry. Let's talk about it. While separated from the research team in the crater's depths, I found a strange entity. Whether it was a Pokemon or even alive at all, I know not. It bore a shell of overlapping hexagons and gleamed brighter than any gemstone. Viewed as a whole, it resembled a mysterious, brilliant disc. This is the only description we have of the center legendary, and this kind of censoring of text, by the way, where they use squares to kind of blotch out text that can't be read, is also seen at one other point in the game. Outside of this, the Scarlet and Violet book that is written by the explorer known as Heath from the past of the Paldea region, but inside Sada and Churo's lab, we also learn about this Pokemon. We've determined that this energy crystallization is linked to the being we call, insert name here, the interlocking hexagonal plates that comprise its shell must somehow cause this phenomenon, which I've dubbed terastallizing. This was written by Sada or Churo in the lab. They know of the existence of this creature. It's interesting to say that both parties are reluctant to call it a Pokemon. It's some kind of greater being. I mentioned in the past how I think that the Pokemon whose eyes we're seeing, the hexagonal head crest of all of the terrestrial Pokemon, is this legendary Pokemon, and it is something greater, a part of the Arceus, probably some kind of dragon-type Pokemon that has a more complete form, like Perfect Zygarde or Eternatus or Necrozma, Ultra Necrozma. I think this Pokemon will follow suit and fall in line with those kinds of Pokemon. So what else do we know about it? Well, we also know that this entry in Heaths Diary is the final entry in his diary. In his diary, I mean the expedition journal. It was kind of reworked into a book, and Heath was ridiculed after it was created. Heath, for those of you who didn't take history class, which I highly recommend you do in the Paldea region, is an explorer who 200 years ago made his way into the crater of the Paldea region with an expedition team with a Cycliza by his side. There, they discovered all sorts of interesting things. They discovered this metal plate with some markings, which you can see today in the Paldea crater overlooking the kind of central area. They discovered the crystals at the bottom that radiate the terrestrial energy, and they discovered terrestrial Pokemon living down there, as well as the paradox Pokemon of the past and future. It seems that these Pokemon were seeping in from the past and future before the time machine was even created, or they were sent back in time there somehow. We know that he knew about Koraidon and Miraidon before the modern day Miraidon and Koraidon that we know of like today. There must have been Miraidon and Koraidon there 200 years ago because it's on the cover of the Scarlet and Violet book. And we also know that Heath had weird experiences. There's this one page that talks about how he remembers speaking with someone vaguely and woke up holding a page with his own handwriting on, but he doesn't remember writing any of these things. They appear to be calculations about warping through time. These symbols, by the way, that appear on the metal plate and appear in his writings, have been talked about before here on YouTube, actually on Kayla's Capsules channel, which talks about how terrestrializing and terrestrialized crystals are they're effectively the Pokemon version of quantum time crystals. And I am absolutely not a quantum mechanics person, so I recommend you watch that video. I'm just the wee little Pokemon nerd who knows vaguely what the word quantum means by reference to the film Ant-Man Quantumania, which is coming out. One thing I did remember from Kayla's video, though, is this image here. It appears on both the box art of the games and also inside the Scarlet and Violet book, and it is the thing that appears on the metal plate, and it's a sextant, an item used for traversal, for knowing exactly where you are. And I believe in the context of the Pokemon world, this is an item being used to help with the traversal of time. These are, I believe, the instructions for time travel. And where is this power of time travel coming from? We do know that some Pokemon have the ability to see into the future, whether that's Kirlia or Gothitelle, Xatu, or even the recent legendary crown Pokemon Calyrex. We know that some Pokemon have the power to travel through time, like for example Celebi, and some Pokemon of course are the god of time, which is like Dialga. But if this third legendary really is a part of Arceus, and Arceus is the one who created Dialga and Palkia, then the ability to manipulate time in some way doesn't seem unreasonable at all. It actually seems very likely that that is one of this Pokemon's power. But if this third dragon, third legendary Pokemon really is a part of the Arceus, like I say, the ultimate being beyond what the form that we see of Arceus is, if it really is that, and Arceus is the one that created Dialga and Palkia and can teleport you, the player character, through time in Legends Arceus, then it seems likely that this Pokemon would have the power to manipulate time in some way. Perhaps that's just a secondary property to it. We know that its shell has hexagonal patterns interlocking to it, and we kind of see similar designs in the room where the time machine that Sada and Churro have perfected is. It seems that this patternry is somehow important to the concept of time travel. It is interesting to note that time machines have technically existed in the Pokemon world before. Whether they're still thought of as canon, I don't know, because they only really appeared in the original Gold, Silver, and Crystal to transfer your Pokemon back to Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow. Since then, it's just been the trade machine, and so the idea that you're trading through time, maybe it's a different kind of time machine, or maybe they really are linked. All of that said, it's interesting to know that the explorer Heath, who we don't know actually what happened to Heath after he wrote the Scarlet or Violet book, is that he witnessed this Pokemon. And after this, we don't know what happened to him. I believe that it's possible that he went back in time and gave a past version of himself the instructions of time travel, or perhaps some time travel shenanigan that we'll learn about in the DLC allowed him to create the Miraidon or Koraidon from his own Cyclizar. But on top of all of that, at the end of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, and by the way, you should not have clicked on this video if you didn't want spoilers, but big spoiler warning for this bit here. Really don't want to know the end of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. Okay, you've definitely had enough time now. Sada is an AI who ends up going back in time, and Churro is an AI who goes forward in time. And while you might think these characters are version exclusives, they're actually not, because in the research notes in the labs for these characters, we learned that the other person, the other parent of Arven, disappeared in the opposite games. So I think in both games, both characters end up going forward and backward in time. It's just depending on which one of them is actually a robot and which one of them is actually a human. All of that said, the big instructions for how to travel time that appear on a metal plate inside the chasm being dug up by the excavation team 200 years ago, I believe that what they're digging up is a metal sent back in time from the future because, according to the page in the Expedition Journal, the metal is made out of something that science can't even comprehend because that metal is from the future and engraved on in the past by someone with the knowledge for time travel, which would be Sada in the past. The two professors work together to guarantee the time machine's existence with each other so that they are the ones to eventually shut it down at the end of the game. But there's something else, another message left back in time, possibly by Heath, dating back to before the Paldean Empire. This is in another page of the Scarlet Violet book, and they are runes in the room of Iron Valiant or Roaring Moon, and these runes seem to also be some kind of instruction to do with time travel, or perhaps this final legendary Pokemon. It's another symbol that also appears on the box of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet and in the book regularly. This seems to be an important message for the future left by the past. I think this will tie into the DLC. There's one final entry in the books of Scarlet and Violet, though, that we need to discuss when it comes to DLC, because when we talk about DLC, the obvious answer that everyone wants to see is Kalos returning. We know that in the northeastern corner of the map, there seems to be a landmass that we can't yet access, and maybe we never will be able to, but if it is based on the real-world locations these games are based on, then it should be Kalos to the north of here. And this is actually possible because we see that illusion form of the Swords of Justice, and the Swords of Justice are based on the Three Musketeers, which aren't actually French, even though these versions first appeared in the Unova region. Alternatively, if you play Scarlet version, get this really cool Raikou Entei Suicune, and this is where things begin to get a little bit confusing. Because when it comes to Raikou Entei and Suicune, they were transformed into those forms as the result of Ho-Oh after the tower burnt down in the Johto region. So what were they before? Is this a paradox form of those Pokemon or something else entirely? Are Paradox Pokemon really past and future versions? Or are the lore and legends that we know actually wrong? Which is totally possible, by the way, because there are multiple Ho-Oh and Raikou Entei and Suicune out there in the various regions of the Pokemon world. They can't all have come from the same tower in Johto, surely. So perhaps the lore that we know is wrong. If the Kalos region does happen, though, there are going to be huge connections to this game and to do with Mega Evolution, but I discussed those a lot more in the Timeline of Paldea video. So click that link in the description below and let me know what you're thinking about this story, these legends. It seems to me that time travel was almost definitely at play, and time travel is a big part of the theming of this Pokemon, and that this Pokemon is of course represented by the terrestrial hexagon that appears on the head of all terrestrial Pokemon. I expect its shell is made up of literally terrestrial crystals. Let me know what you think in the comments down below, and thank you again to Surfshark VPN for sponsoring this video, and of course, so hi Pokemon Masters.
This is Ash Ketchum. You just watched a video by Birdkeeper Toby. That makes you a Pokemon Master.
Thank you so much to those of you supporting me on Patreon, allowing me to put out as many videos as I have lately, including the big patrons of this month, Anthony Lee, El Gator, Charmander Aznable, and Jed Rubin. Thank you.